بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Let's begin. Assalamu alaikum to both of you. Thank you so much for accepting for today's podcast. We find ourselves towards the end of Shahr Ramadhan. So it's been, 29, 30 days nearly of the month, and people have been engaging in various practices, but we find ourselves at the end of the month. And this gives an opportunity for us to discuss how we operate going forward. How do we take lessons from the month, or how do we draw the right lessons from the month, so that when we're going from now until inshallah the next month of Ramadan, we have made certain long lasting changes in our lives, or certain practices we have sustained over a long period of time. But before we get there, we should check in and see how we are doing, inshallah, and see how everyone is. Sheikh Zoheir, I'll start with you. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Where are you? And how has your month been?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much. I'm doing well. Inshallah, I hope you're doing as well as well. I'm in London at the moment, and alhamdulillah, we are in the month of barakah and blessings. And I don't think there's any way not to be happy in this month. So alhamdulillah, the month has been absolutely beautiful, as it is every single year. Alhamdulillah.
That it feels different this year because you're back in London. So that is a very tangible difference we have noticed. Alhamdulillah.
Well, I had more rain, that was for sure.
London rain, really? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Sheikh Nabil, so assalamu alaikum again to you. How's everything? I think you're back maybe at home in Peterborough. How are things?
I am, yeah, alhamdulillah, going well. Just it's the alhamdulillah second year that I've been able to do Shahr Ramadhan at home in I don't know how many years. So soaking it all in, and with a newborn, doubling up with that, stoking in the family life. So alhamdulillah, getting used to speaking on camera with no audience now.
I mean, it's been like what, a year of this for Majalis. At this point, it must be normal now, right?
Yeah, I mean, by now, you're less robotic, and you're starting to feel a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, but I think you must miss the crowds as much as they miss you, Agha.
Oh, speaking in front of people is, that has its own, surur, as it were. So yeah, definitely. Hopefully, inshallah, we see centers are opening up. So, in the next few months, we should be back to in front of people, inshallah.
Inshallah. Sheikh Zoheir, because I was thinking you are teaching online now more than maybe you would have been teaching in person before. Are you used to it now? Do you enjoy it? You can be honest and say if you enjoy it. This is a very safe space. But what are the differences for you?
I'll definitely say there's advantages and disadvantages. So, with interacting in person with the students, there's always that, connection. And you manage to teach things in a soft manner that you can't teach online. I think there's just some things you just can't teach online. But at the same time, with all the chats running and the students coming, they're more relaxed even from their own personal environments. So sometimes you find that they're more willing to engage questions and things like that. So it's been a mixed experience for me. I mean, sometimes when you can't see anybody's face, you have to keep asking questions to make sure there's anybody still there. So yeah. Well, alhamdulillah, all in all, it's been a good experience. But I am also very much looking forward to teaching back in person again.
Alhamdulillah. You wrote something which is what made me think about this particular episode of discussing at the end of Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan. It was on the idea of finishing strong in the month. And I remember the theme you were writing about was that if we recognize that we are guests of Allah in this month, that itself provides a level of appreciation for the month. And you appreciate every moment. And I wanted to ask you, based on your ideas writing that, maybe the feedback, how should one feel at the end of this month? That feeling of feeling strong and finishing strong and making the most of every second that we have. Like, what does that feel like for the Muslim, in the end of the month?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. The month of Ramadan, the way I see the month of Ramadan, it is a month where we cannot fully comprehend the mercy and the blessings that are upon us. And usually the way we speak about the movement is we kind of think of it as a pump and dump, right? People say there's like a huge build up until Laylatul Qadr, and then all of a sudden there's a crash. But I think that is something we impose on ourselves. I don't think it's like that. I think especially the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan are a time of year which is unlike any other time of year. So in one way, instead of focusing just on how we think of it, we should also be connected with how it is, which is that in the presence of being the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not a pump and dump. It is when if you like, as a stock rises, there's a peak and then it kind of moves down like that, rather than just a huge up and huge down. So in order to appreciate that, there are obviously certain preparatory things that we have to do, especially, and this is why the months of Rajab, Sha'ban are important, and also why the whole year is important. Ramadan shouldn't be just a highlight, if you like, or just a time where we just focus and run very hard. Rather, if we can make our journey stable throughout the year, then month of Ramadan is like a catalyst on the upward trend, rather than an up and a down. So I don't know if I've answered your question, started out all the parts of the question, but basically one of the most important traits a Muslim has is the trait of thankfulness. And that trait of thankfulness should be so deeply soaking into our worldview and our existence that we're always in a positive state, because we're always thankful for the innumerable blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has on us, rather than us judging Allah's mercy by our kind of imposition on how it should be or how it shouldn't be. So yeah.
Definitely, and that is a very visual example about the way that it rises and falls. And you're right. It based on your perspective, the month is either the end or the beginning of something, or an anomaly, which is obviously the thing which we are hoping against. That person goes back to the way they were at the end of the month, the way they were at the beginning, and it was as if it didn't happen in the first place. I like this idea of looking at it in terms of rising and falling, especially Laylatul Qadr. It rises, we feel so spiritual at the end. You just can't wait for the end of the month. Sheikh Nabil, when you speak to people and when you think about this issue, how do we counter the curve, as it were, of the way down after the Laylatul Qadr? How do we at least let it stabilize in a way that it can carry on in the next months?
Um, the reason, first and foremost, is the way we end up with this sort of this peak and then a straight, dump, as Sheikh put it. One of the reasons for that is that we dread the holy month of Ramadan. Yeah, the whole year we dread it. And we're like, oh no, Rajab comes and that dread starts building, and Sha'ban comes and it's getting even worse. And then the first of the holy month, and we're like, no, the moon hasn't been sighted yet. No, according to my merchant, it's not. We're delaying it.
Which is the last possible moment, literally the point of the moon.
Exactly. Now I'm forced into this situation because I don't want to pay the kafara or do the, all the fasts and everything that I have to do. So I'm forced into this situation. And you'll see that as a person goes through it, eventually as their body gets used to it, and as they approach Laylatul Qadr, they start to become a bit more relaxed because they're forced into that situation. And then the moment, it comes towards Eid, now most people may be a bit pensive and look back and think, I should have done better, and, maybe I could improve in some way. Or others, are like, can't wait for Eid, trying to look for the earliest possible day of Eid that they can get, oh no, but this moon chart says this, because, fundamentally, if you look at it, the main thing that is there in Shahr Ramadan, or the main thing that disrupts our life, is the hunger, is the forcing ourselves to stay hungry, because, our stomachs have become our God. In one of the narrations that talk about Akhiru Zaman, the Holy Prophet says, there'll come upon a time that upon the people, butunuhum alihatuhum, their stomachs will become their gods, and everything they do will be around their stomachs. And so we're so worried when we get hungry. So the thing is that now that we've passed this and we've reached our spiritual peak, that was Layal al-Qadr, we've been working towards those nights. You know, the Urafa start from Laylatul Qadr to Laylatul Qadr. You know, they begin preparing for the next Laylatul Qadr from the moment the first Laylatul Qadr ends. And, you know, they start building, because every year there's something that you can unlock. And now, Sheikh used the example of stocks, I'll use the example of the gym. You know, in the same way, like you go to the gym and you know, after a long break, and all of a sudden you get in there and you start lifting 20, 30, 100 kgs, and you can do it a few times. And then you go home and you feel great. But 2 days later, you're like, I can't move because I've got the DOMS and, you know, lactic acid. And it happens the same with our ibadat. Our nafs inherently is lazy. So the moment we enforce all this ibadat on it, it's like, whoa, you know, I don't want to do this. When's Eid? When's Eid? When's Eid? When am I going to eat? You know, and that's all it wants to do. So what we have to do is essentially train it. So now, as we're leaving the holy month of Ramadan, if I've started the recitation of the Holy Quran that I had started, that I wasn't doing before the holy month, yes, I can't recite one chapter every single day because I'm not used to it. So what I can do is set myself a goal. It doesn't matter how small it is. You know, 5 ayats. If it's just 5 ayats, just do that for 2 weeks. But with setting those goals, a person, in the same way that they have a gym regime, needs to set themselves targets for the next. So for 2 weeks, I'm going to recite 5 ayat a day, and I will find that myself, I will want to increase that. Yeah, so I'm regimented for 2 weeks, and then I'll increase to 10, and then I'll increase to 2 pages. Like this, I slowly build, especially with the mustahab. I mean, only with the mustahabat. With the wajibat, there's no way out. But with the mustahabat, the person has to build themselves into that. So in order to maintain ourselves, to be able to reach the next Laylatul Qadr at a higher level that than we are today, we have to continue with small things that we're adding. So if I don't do tasbih after my wajib salah, I'll add a tasbih, add the recitation of the Holy Quran, add especially Salatul Layl. If I can't recite all 11 rak'ah, just recite the 1 rak'ah of Salatul Witr. And even that, you know, if I can't do all of the dhikr in the qunut, just recite salawat. But enforce on myself just one thing and build on it every 2 weeks. Just add another small bit. You know, we go from 0 to 100, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, I can't maintain this. That's it. You know, I need to go cold turkey from all this ibadah.
I really like this idea of training, because it's, I guess, in the analogy of the gym, the lactic acid is the nafs, if I follow correctly, where it is resisting and it is not wanting to be in this regime. And one of the narrations of the month of Ramadan being shaitan is locked up, one interpretation is that it means that any temptation, any sin is that which was already kept internally. It wasn't that which was coming from any external temptation. It was what your nafs had already been trained or was used to indulging in. And you have to deal with that. And the moment Eid comes, you know, the shaitan is let back in, and now you are ready to deal with the rest of the external world after having really worked at yourself. But one issue in this scenario is that the nafs is ready and waiting for the next opportunity for that slip. And when that slip happens, the biggest worry would be that it was too much. It was nice. I read this much Quran. Now I'm going to go back to 0, that 0 back to 100. And I wonder, and I guess you can follow up, or Sheikh, if you have any thoughts on this. How do we preempt that voice of the nafs? How do we get ready for what's eventually going to come towards us, which is that temptation? How do we prepare ourselves for that moment after, let's say, after the first breakfast, which we haven't had in ages? It's like, it's on again. How do I get ready for that moment?
Yeah. I mean, I think just very briefly, and I'm sure Sheikh Zoheir will have much more to add than I can, but I think look at it like, how do you train your pet? You know, sometimes we have to look at the nafs like, because it is your animalistic desire. It's the very basic framework that exists in all things, all animals and everything. And how do you train an animal? You know, it's through a system of reward. You know, so I train myself. Look, okay, fine. If I'm going to recite 5 ayat of the Holy Quran a day for a week, I can buy myself X. or I'll have a slice of cake or something like that, depending on what aspect of myself I'm trying to control. You know, if I've got an issue with, for example, my desires in regards to food, I can't control myself when something sweet's in front of me. You know, there's some people who just can't control their eating. So if I'm going to try and, because that comes down to a nafsi issue, you know, so I need to understand that first and foremost, and then set up a system of, okay, slowly but surely, I'm going to ease the nafs into these extra mustahabbat, stay away from certain things. So if I know that I lie, not big lies, I just tell the odd white lie here and there in jokes and whatever, trying to get a laugh out of people. I make that conscientious effort and I say, okay, look, I take it day at a time. Today, I will not lie. And if I look at it a day at a time, it becomes a lot easier. The moment I look at, oh, I've got to become one of the awliya, I've got to reach the maqam of Salman and Abu Dhar, oh, it's a mountain, you know, like some of the other functions for 40 years, you know, we did tazkiyat al-nafs for 40 years, you know, we fought against our desires. And even then, shaitan, we see him in a mukashafa and shaitan is there going, I'm still going to take you to hell, you know, for, you know, just one moment you slip up, I'll take you there. You know, so you have this, if you look at it like that, it's overwhelming. But if you take it a day at a time with the regime that you have and understand your nafs to be like an animal that you're training, set up a few rewards for yourself along the way, it becomes easier.
Zoheir, thoughts on that type of self-knowledge in preempting the nafs?
Yeah, I mean, some really key and important points have been brought up so far. I think one of the most important things is that we have a good idea of spiritual health. Like Sheikh Nabil said, you can look at physical health and you can directly compare this almost to spiritual health as well. We have physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. Now, of course, with all of those, knowledge is what empowers you. If you don't know what is physically damaging for yourself, you will do things without realizing because things are fun to do, which are which are physically damaging. And same way when it comes to your mental health, when it comes to your spiritual health, the same thing is the case. So in terms of first understanding the soul, understanding the pulls of the soul, understanding the different voices, if you like, in your head, whether it is shaitan, whether it is the carnal self, whether it is blaming self, whether it is imagination, and so on and so forth. So I would say one of the most important things that a person can empower themselves with is knowledge. And then the amal salih, or the good actions that come along with, with that are supposed to come along with knowledge, are something that, like Sheikh Nabil says, it's good if there's a program, but many times we are also not that qualified in setting our own programs as well. That has to also be taken into account. But another good point that I just want to emphasize what Sheikh Nabil said as well is this idea of putting conditions, watching over, and then taking yourself to account. Some of the scholars of akhlaq and of irfan have actually narrowed down the whole spiritual path to saying it is muraqabah. Muraqabah just means watching over yourself. So when you have the pull to do something wrong, you don't do it. When you understand that your soul is in the state of wanting to do ibadah, you push it towards ibadah. When you find it's pushing you away from ibadah, you see why that is the case, and so on and so forth. This constant monitoring is something that can definitely help to give that movement from Laylatul Qadr to Laylatul Qadr. And this is what is summarized in Jihad al-Nafs. Jihad al-Nafs is what I call Jihad al-Nafs, I call it personality development. Personality development, because what you're trying to do with Jihad al-Nafs is you're trying to build the Islamic personality. Yeah. So in order to do that, you need to have all of these tools, but you also need to have an eye consistently on meaningful change. Change that is really from within and really developing your personality. So if these things are in line, then you are moving on an upward trajectory, and you will find that each Shahr Ramadan is different and each Laylatul Qadr is different, and all of those spiritual goals that are important for your spiritual health will be achievable.
In the beginning, you said that you can look at the growth, spiritual growth, similar to physical and emotional. They have certain similarities in the way that you would look at them. When you use the word personality here, that we're looking for personality development, does the word personality encompass these three things more or less? What do we mean by my personality in that sense?
Sorry, just repeat that. Does the personality development encompass?
So, does it encompass the physical, spiritual, and emotional?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm having, it says on my computer, I've got slight bandwidth issue. But yes, definitely. Personality development is a holistic development. It is health in all aspects of life, because you see, the body, the mind, and the soul or the spirit, they are all related. They are one reality, which has different grades. So sometimes when somebody is stressed, it affects their heart rate. Okay, that's the kind of mental state, okay, which is affecting the physical state. But also when they're stressed and worried, they will find it difficult, for example, to do things that are important for their spirituality. So their prayer will be affected if they're overly worried about something. So the three aspects link back together, and definitely the Islamic personality is such that it should be a holistic personality, and a personality that is a happy personality that reaches true happiness on all of these levels. Most of us have experienced the physical happiness. When you go to the gym, you feel great, right? But mental happiness is when you have peace. You feel excellent and happiness in that sense. And then spiritual happiness, of course, is a level above even the mental and the physical happiness.
Sheikh Nabil, you introduced the concept of looking at the physical as an example of this. I want to ask you, do you think that physical growth is integrated with spiritual growth and intellectual growth? And if so, I'm going to guess you do. How those things link together? How do we visualize them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's all linked, right? Yeah, like Sheikh just said, it's all part of the one you. Your physical, your mental, emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, and so it's key that all of them, you have an eye on all of them. What often happens is that we become obsessed with one and forget about the others. So at times I can be more obsessed about my spirituality and about praying and things like that, but I'm not really focusing on what I eat. Whereas what I eat is key to my spiritual growth as well. But we don't sometimes connect them because there's such a disconnect in the life that we live. Everything is compartmentalized. The system that we are in the West, that we're integrated into, is a compartmentalization. Your work is there, that's how you are at work. And this is how you are at the mosque and the masjid, and this is how you are at home. And it's that idea of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God's. And that's permeated into us. Whereas an Islamic perspective is, look, none of this is separate. This is all one stream going towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are on this journey, whether you like it or not. And all of this is an amalgamation. They're all interlinked. They're all connected with each other. If one falls off and is not keeping up with the rest, then that will slow the whole self down on that journey towards like perfection, that kamal that a human being is destined or should be working towards. And so, the spiritual side of it is connected to the physical. Sometimes we focus on the physical side, and I forget about my spirituality. And they're different strengths. Spiritual strength is very different from physical strength. You have someone who can go and lift 100 kgs, deadlift in the gym, but yet you ask that person to sit for 25 minutes or 35 minutes or 45 minutes for Joshin Kabir, and he's already stretching out his legs and putting spiritual strength and physical strength are two different things. And so, when we understand that it's one whole movement, this is, I'm going to the gym, qurbatan ilallah. I'm praying qurbatan ilallah. I'm developing my mind and learning about other things outside of the religion as well. It's qurbatan ilallah, because I'm trying to everything is about getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we've got to come away from that compartmentalization. Our society that we live in is, it was created, or the education system, everything was created during the time of the Industrial Revolution. And it was to get people from school to the workhouse. And then in the workhouse, they will work for the betterment of the bourgeoisie or those that are in power, and then they die. And that's it. That is all the exact, the worth of your life is just to go, you're essentially a lamb to slaughter, so that we need to excel beyond that and to think beyond that as well. And that only happens when we think of everything as a single entity within ourselves going forward. And that happens when I change that mindset of mine, and make Allah at the forefront of everything that I do. Sometimes Allah takes a back seat in certain, my business dealing. Allah takes a back seat. But when I'm, going for the first line of Salatul Jama'ah, then Allah is there. But when I'm at work and you work for me, then there's no Allah here. It's just me. So it has to be this holistic approach, and that really is something that we've got to understand, that it is a whole aspect, a whole paradigm shift essentially that needs to happen within our mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. When you actually think of how holistic the religion of Islam is in terms of how it's accounted for every factor of life, and then like you mentioned, you look at the society in which we're in, it is sometimes a very chaotic experience to put yourself in that society when your religion expects so much more from you and actually offers so much more to you. And the way that you are judged, the way that the lenses are applied towards you are so limiting that you wonder if in our society we'll ever be seen for what we actually are, because so much of our religion is internal and is esoteric and is hidden and is secretive by design because it's valuable. And that's why it's important to value oneself rather than expect it around us. Sheikh Zoheir, I want to put this question to you because I know that you have lived in the East and the West, and you will have that perspective as well. Do you see, especially in months of Ramadan, the spirituality of Islam being appreciated by people in this Western environment? Have we found ways to neglect things or to take opportunities? And I ask this to you because people leaving this month are going to go back to their jobs, go back to school, go back to their normal lives, and they will want to make the ordinary everyday that a little bit more spiritual. So I'll ask you, how can they go about doing this?
It's a beautiful question again. I think in terms of going back to work and everything getting back to normal, there's not that much difference between the East and the West. People are people everywhere. They get busy everywhere. They get consumed in life everywhere. At the end of the day, the veils of the material realm are such that they just affect us all naturally. But in terms of about what to do about this is the important thing. There are a number of teachings that we have in our scriptural sources, especially from the Holy Quran, that help us to understand that there are some fundamental outlooks that a person should have in order for them to just be a effective, if you like, to be a spiritual person everywhere. One of them was the attitude of thankfulness that I spoke about before. But another very key view that a person has to completely internalize is the view of being a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I say internalize that, what I mean is that a person has to honestly be that servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has to be their personality. Islam and spirituality is a way of life. It is not seasonal. It is not like the pump and dump. It is something that you build within yourself over a period of time until it's almost like a small light. Starts off as a small flickering candle. You have to close your hands around and protect it, blow on it till it gets larger and larger until it becomes fire, such that if you put it in front of a huge wind, it will just become stronger. It won't even become weaker. It won't blow up. Whereas, of course, if you put that small candle in the beginning outside and you put a strong gust of wind against it, it will blow up. So the Muslim has to keep developing this idea of ubudiyah, of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an easy conception. And again, this is one of the beautiful things about Islam. It is an easy conception to think about being a servant of Allah. But the practical realization of the servanthood of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such that one of the greatest epithets we give to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that he is the abd. He is the prototype of what it means to be a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are a couple of ideals. When these ideals are internalized, and that is who you are, then it doesn't matter if you're at work. It doesn't matter if you're watching TV. It doesn't matter if you're with your children. It doesn't matter wherever you are. You are the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every single state. So this is the way, East and West, this is a human problem. Everybody is distracted by things. And even the distraction on the mental level is one thing. Distraction on the level of your being is another thing. So it's also normal that you will have periods of concentration. I mean, when you're reading a legal contract, yeah, you're gonna have a split mind. You have to concentrate on what's in front of you. But what is the person concentrating on that legal document like? Is it the abd of Allah concentrating on the legal document? Or is it just somebody who hasn't worked to that level to have that really internalized within themselves? So this is how I would kind of go about thinking about that kind of question.
Because you mentioned legal documents and that's my profession, I suddenly feel very like targeted. But but I know you mean in general. A person should have concentration in every action they do, for sure. Sheikh Nabil, I want to ask if you have any thoughts on that point in general, but also about this idea of being grateful. Because actually, you did mention it earlier, Sheikh, and it's actually a good thing to expand upon. If we are truly grateful in like a practical sense, it will have an effect on our behavior. It won't just be a thing that we say in sajda and we move on. It has some effect, and the effect that you're describing in the it comes first and everything else comes second. That your relationship to Allah is the primary dialogue you're engaged with in your life. And all other things, relationships are either in service or against that dialogue. A job is either halal risk for that reason. A friendship is a friendship because that person guides you towards Allah. Like we're putting things in priority. And people at the end of this month, maybe they've had a chance in the month of Ramadan to get their priorities right because they are forced to have to engage with these ideas of Allah and Uluhiyya because they're going to Qadr, they're actually waking up for Fajr. Maybe they haven't been doing that all year. And actually, Sheikh Nabil, you mentioned this before as well when you mentioned putting Allah first. So in putting priorities to what's important in our lives, how do we put Allah first and keep Him first?
Yeah. I think the getting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first in our own lives, that one of the ways Sheikh has already mentioned it was muraqab. But the other way is actually just sitting and meditating. There is just so much that is going on in our lives. My mobile is constantly going. The TV is constantly on. I've got to finish this series on Netflix. There's a new one I've got to start on Amazon Prime. I've heard about this movie coming out. I've got COVID. I've got the kids at home. I've got all of this that's going on. And everything is there to distract me. So sometimes I need to find a time to have some time alone to meditate, to be mindful of myself. That's one of those great things right now is mindfulness meditation. And it's we're using that and trying to apply it to an Islamic paradigm where we're doing Islamic mindfulness meditation. No, Islam said it way before. Some psychologists came along and saying that as a psychologist. Islam had this idea before all of this. This idea of muhasabah, this idea of tafakkur, of tadabbur. This is all of that. Sit down, take account of yourself, sit down. Just think about your relationship with Allah. When you genuinely sit and you think about that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it starts with thankfulness, as Sheikh said, because the moment you meditate, you think about all of the things in your life and you come down to the granular level. In one of the narrations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Hazrat Musa, he says, Musa, ask me even for the salt in your food. Meaning, you don't even think of it as something of significance, but when you begin to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything and anything that you need in your life, you begin to realize, wait, I have nothing from myself. Everything that I have is from Allah. And then straight away, a person falls into shukr. And the more thankful you become. And that's the irony of it. And that's the mercy and the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, the more thankful you become, He gives you more. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. So here, this abd that has committed sin after sin after sin, has forgotten Him for years after, has in his arrogance thought his degrees, his jobs, his maqamat that he's achieved within this mortal realm is all from Him. And Allah is saying, okay, look, he has forgotten me. It's okay. I'll carry on bestowing upon him. But the moment he acknowledges it's from me, Allah says, look, doesn't matter. I'm going to give him even more. That's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you become more thankful, and this is actually something personal to me as well. I'd realized some years ago, maybe, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, realized that actually there was a lot of negativity in my life. We were looking at all of these deviant groups that were coming up, and we were looking at all these people that are coming forward, and we're like, oh my God, they're coming to destroy Islam. And you're getting worked up and you're spending all night on, some sort of forum talking about how to take down these new deviants, and these people are coming to, and it was filled with negativity, although it was Islamic work. But I was just so negative about it. And that was then, going to other parts of my life. And I realized, actually, you know what? I've got to stop carrying around all of this hate and the burden of the world on my shoulders. I've got to focus on myself. And the first way to do it is become more thankful. And I can honestly say, the more you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no end to the bounties that He begins to bestow upon you. And, people are talking about, everyone's a life coach nowadays. And no offense to all the life coaches, but every time I open up my Facebook, there's someone new from the community that's become a life coach. Eventually, we can end up with so many Shia life coaches and not enough Shias to coach. But the start of all of this life coaching and everything is, okay, be thankful. You get these books where it says, okay, write down your 5-minute diary. Okay, what are the things that you're thankful for? Well, Islam said this ages ago. He said that, look, the more thankful you are, the less the burden. Allah will give you more in your life, make you more happy. And that happiness isn't derived from material things, but rather it's a state of being. That, me with a flashy car and a big house and all of that, I'm still worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. And then you have people like, Abu Dhar that's living in the desert of Rabal, and they're coming to try and buy him, and he's saying, no, I don't want this money. He says, but look, you're living in a mud hut in the middle of nowhere. And he's saying, they go, what are you going to eat? He goes, look, 2 loaves of bread here, one for me and my wife today, one for me and my wife tomorrow. He says, but your daughter, Abu Dhar, what's she going to eat? He says, I've taught her Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Allah will provide for her. That iman only comes through thankfulness. And this society that we live in and how we've been brought up is to be always needy and greedy. Look at ad campaigns. I don't want to go on too much, but you look at ad campaigns. A Pepsi, obey your thirst. You know, a Snickers, you're not you when you're hungry. These are all the things that are attacking, talking directly to your nuts. There's nothing there like be thankful about the life that you have. No, it's always trying to sell you a lifestyle that you don't have, always trying to tell you that the grass is greener on the other side. And you go and you reach the other side and you realize it's not greener and you become more upset. So then you try and look for something else and something else and something else. But when you start with thankfulness and you look at what you have and you're happy with it comes contentment. And then that makes a person rich. That makes a person, that person can't be bought. When I'm content with what I have in my life, someone turns up and says, look, here's 500,000, renounce the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You'll be like, why? I don't need to. I mean, I've got everything I need. But, our society isn't geared that way. It's geared to make us greedy.
Today's podcast was meant to be sponsored by Pepsi and Snickers. I'd like to apologize to our sponsors for the offense caused by the guest. and but actually, I want to thank you for the personal reflection there, because these ideas can be quite abstract sometimes, looking at gratitude and thankfulness. But giving an example like you did from your own life helps people to relate to their own life about, well, what is the source of negativity in my life? And if we're being if we're being specific in this point, most people will have things that you've mentioned, Agha, that are giving them negativity, but some people are in very dark places, and the source of negativity, which does affect them and their faith, does seem from their perspective to be extremely strong. I'm thinking people in difficult relationships, people who can't share the truth of their religion because their family might not allow it, people in societies where they are bullied or mocked for being religious, for example. I remember not long ago we were on Clubhouse and somebody came on and mentioned a point about, like, why would Allah even pay attention to me? If you look at the sins I've done, why would he even think of me? Well, maybe the imams will be ashamed of me. And he's mentioning the points in a way that made me feel that this person has internalized shame in their worship in a way that we're not really encouraged to in that way. um if somebody is feeling like this, where they're thinking the negativity is quite strong and it's not letting me be that spiritual self, I can't find the thankfulness in these situations. One advice you've both mentioned is contemplation, which is so useful, doing that muhasabah, where you actually do take a step back, make a space where you just think and reflect, and the person will find gratitude in that space. What other ways are there for people to find gratitude in their lives for Allah and for what He has given them, including reflection, and especially for those people who might not, that approach might not have worked for them? So how else can they seek that gratitude? And that's to either of you, if you have an approach in mind.
Shaykhana, Bismillah. I've spoken too much.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead if there's anything.
No, please.
Okay. You see, like you've mentioned, sometimes there are certain barriers that we have towards even sometimes thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even sometimes seeing ourselves as worthy of any kind of forgiveness or any kind of anything else. And this is why, again, in the beginning, the knowledge is very important, because the view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this view is such that He, for example, He will not forgive me. That is not the view that we have of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us to always have the positive view of Him. So the kind of teachings that if someone's in this situation, what they need to be listening to are the kind of teachings that increase their understanding of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, increase their understanding of how our hadith have pushed towards a good view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the hadiths are quite shocking almost in terms of the extent of that good view that you're supposed to have of Allah. And then after that knowledge kind of that is there, then depending on how far this has gone, there needs to be a program of kind of bringing yourself out of this darkness. And it is important to understand that it is shaitan that pulls you towards that negativity and pulls you away from Allah like this. When I say shaitan, I don't mean that therefore the person, you know, who's going through it has been affected by shaitan. I don't mean that. Shaitan also makes everybody do or everybody think various things. That's what I mean from that perspective, from a metaphysical perspective. So what a person needs to do, the best combat for shaitan on every level is to simply ignore him. Okay? Now that is a habit that needs to be developed. It's not something that happens just straight away. Okay? So when you feel like you have the thought that, why would Allah forgive me? You have to ignore that thought. You can't take that thought and go along with it and move further and further. Why would Allah not forgive me? I remember I did this. I'm not a good person. And I remember I did. That is capitalizing on something that has occurred within your soul that is not even really from you in the beginning. Yes, your soul can become used to doing this to you. And of course, that's when you get into a harder kind of habit that you have to break out of. But if it is not related, and again here, if it's not related to something medical or something like that, but if it is just a state of mind that somebody has found themselves in, which is very common as well, uh, I'm sure Sheikh Nabil also get contacted many times with people with these kind of issues and how to get out of them. And getting out of them, the formula, if you like, the formula is to empower yourself with the knowledge of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also to not go down those dark alleys, not go down those rabbit holes, but rather to keep reinforcing the positive messages, keep reinforcing the ideas of Allah's love for his creatures, reinforcing the ideas of Allah honoring his creatures. And also sometimes we sometimes self kind of harm in the way we harshly judge ourselves for certain things. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not said that he will punish us for everything. Okay, he'll punish us for those things that we don't feel sorry about. He'll punish us for those things that we don't rectify. But at the same time, sometimes we punish ourselves for things that Allah won't punish us for. Okay, sometimes we punish ourselves for a thought. Okay, but there's no punishment for thoughts. You can think whatever you want. Okay, all right. So these kind of things, and like I say, we're also talking on a very general level here as well. But I mean, these kind of ideas, these kind of things are going to help a person move out of there to really understand that it is not like they think. While they are convinced that this is the way, it is not like that. They have been convinced about something that is not that way. It is in a completely different way. There's one hadith I always remember. I don't know if that will help many people. But there is a hadith from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says, "My shafa'ah, okay, so my intercession is for the ahlul kaba'ir min ummati." Okay, my shafa'ah is for the people that do regularly do major sins from amongst my ummah. Okay, so again, this is also many Urafa have said they've said that, you know, they in the conversations that they have with Allah, they have a playful kind of conversation where they say, "Oh Allah, if you don't bring me close to you, I will go and tell everybody about your mercy, and then nobody will obey you." Because the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so much that it gives so much hope that even there's traditions to say that shaitan will hope for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So empowering self with knowledge, not going down deep rabbit holes, and ignoring shaitan. And like I said, this is a process that's going to need time, some level of maybe help from family members and so on and so forth to keep encouraging, learning how to have a positive attitude towards everything. Yeah, I sometimes when I'm speaking about this as well, I call it delusional positivity. Okay, being so positive that people think you're being delusional, but at the end, after when I have mentorship programs as well, I also force my students to do this, to have delusional positivity. And then after a period of time, I tell them, I break the news to them that what you thought was delusional positivity was not delusional. What was delusional was the negativity you had beforehand. That was what was the delusion. not the positive, going forward. So inshallah, there's some ideas there.
The example is beautiful of the Urfa saying that. And it makes me think that maybe you mentioned this hadith just so you can tell Allah that you mentioned it, because the people listening will then will then think that, yeah, my sins as well. But I've noticed a theme in both of you in the idea of positive reinforcement, that we have to keep telling ourselves, keep reminding ourselves. And if you look at the nafs like an animal or a child or something like that, then the you that you're actually speaking to is encouraging you to tame it or to control it or to, to keep going. And this is a good answer for a variety of people, whether they're old or young, and whatever age they are. And it makes me think that the month of Ramadan is almost, it's tailor built for the person, what they need at that time, because the goals that present themselves to you in this month are what you need at that moment to act as provision for the rest of the journey. There is no one size fits all. There's no checklist of dua which everyone has got to do on Laylatul Qadr, and then you become a certain level. Different things work for different people. Um, and that's the point that I was thinking of. I want to ask you, Sheikh, something, because you said family around you should support you in these goals. And earlier you mentioned that when you're making a spiritual goal, an expert, or I think you suggested a scholar or somebody who has an understanding of these issues, can advise you. Why is it important to surround yourself with people who look at life like this? I mean, what effect does it have to be around that kind of support network for your spirituality?
Of course, in the best situation, you'll have people that can actually support you in the ideals and in the journeys and within the problems that you have in life. Of course, there's also the flip side as well, and that sometimes many of the Urafa have been surrounded by people that have been the complete opposite, and that has helped them also reach the high levels as well. So whichever situation you find yourself in, there's always a benefit. There's one hadith that I read as a very young boy, and it's always just remained in my head here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't put any believer except in the best situation. So whichever situation you face is the best for you. But it's clear also that if you have people that can continually remind you, that can continually support you, that understand why you're doing certain things, understand, for example, why you wake up in the middle of the night or whatever it happens to be, that you need to do in order to understand why you need time to go and think, because some people can also be so closed that they will not give you space to think, not give you space to do anything. If you have family members that know you're going through a tough patch and therefore are there for you to remind you to be positive, when they see you saying negative stuff, they just remind you to keep that positive attitude, or they do things to make you happy, because when you become negative, sometimes we become so heavy that we can't be happy anymore. So surrounding yourself with that beautiful presence as well. But in terms of teaching and mentors and things like that, these are things that are absolutely essential for anybody who really wants to do anything serious in terms of spiritual development. The knowledge of spirituality is not just there. It's actually a knowledge like all other knowledges. If you want to learn about ilm rijal, you can read books, but the best thing is to go and sit with a scholar who has studied ilm rijal, been in that situation for more than your lifetime. I mean, I was I used to attend a bath kharaj of a certain alim, and in his ilm rijal. And one day, I never actually thought about how many years has he been studying the subject. One year he just said, "I've been studying the subject for 57 years." And at that point, it just clicked to me that that's longer, that's longer than I've lived. He's been studying that subject longer than I've lived. So spirituality as well is an expertise. It's not something that is just, just there. So having good mentors, finding good mentors, and that is something that is a big tawfiq as well. It's not something small. Um, and inshallah, we pray everybody is able to find the expertise that they need.
Inshallah. And we also pray that the listeners pray for Sheikh Zoheir's long life, at least as long as 57 or more, just to fulfill that thought, inshallah. Inshallah, but a long and healthy life. Um, Inshallah. Sheikh Nabil, I wanted to flip this to you on the idea of having a positive social circle around you, because that's something very practical that we can do. What considerations do you take in your kind of social circle, your support system? Clearly, your choice of podcast is a commendable thing, but also, what other thoughts do you actively keep in your mind when you're choosing what kind of energy to surround yourself with, and how can we advise others to do the same?
Yeah, having the, and this is something I say a lot of the times, when parents, they contact us and they'll be like, oh, my son's gone off the rails, he doesn't want to be involved in the religion. And one of the things I always ask them, I said, who are your son's friends or your daughter's friends? And they'll be like, oh, well, he doesn't have many, or it's, John from school or whatever. It's mostly, we don't have that many Muslims or Shias in the area that we live in. And I always say, look, that's where the fundamental issue is. And people, we go to different places and people are always like, oh, but how is it that you were born here, grown up here, and have chosen to walk, down this path, or, and I'm sure Sheikh as well gets these questions. People are genuinely interested. And I always think back and I think, okay, well, what was it that stopped me from, going down similar path to a lot of others in this city? There were people that are at school with me that are now in jail on drugs charges, or they killed someone or did so. It makes it sound like a great school, but but they're different places. They're living out of a bottle, or and I'm talking about Muslims here. I'm not even talking about non-Muslims. And I always think, what it was? It was my masjid community, the local masjid, and the fact that all of my friends, my closest friends, were the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. That they were my and up until this day, my closest friends, the ones that I see on a weekly basis, the ones that I miss if I don't see, are all the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Because there's just this different type of vibe that you have. So surrounding yourself with people that remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that remind you it's the time to pray. Yeah, many of the friends when we were growing up, there were some brothers that were really good at praying on time. And if there was someone that wasn't so much, you just out of embarrassment, you would pray because like you're all together and this guy remembered it's time to pray. And out of embarrassment, you'd get up and, just pray as well. So surround yourself. And we have so many hadith about it. Like, who should I, the Hawariyun ask Hazrat Isa, that who should I sit with? And, one of the things is like, when you look at this person, it reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they speak, their actions remind you of the akhirah. And that's, when I'm sitting around, there's lots of people that are positive out there, but then not many people that are positive in line with teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasalam. And that is the key. You're finding yourself a circle of strong Shia mu'mineen that you can grow around, that you can get close to, and they keep you on the straight and narrow, because you're always trying, if at first it's just trying to appease the people, and Allah out of his mercy is like, okay, fine, you do it for the people. One day you're going to turn back to me. One day it's going to click. And out of his mercy, he allows me to carry on, doing that. So it's, looking for that. I remember Ayatollah Mujtahidi Tehrani Marhum, he would say, look, if you're looking for a friend, then look for someone that's better than you, that you think is better than you. So if you know that you pray all your salah on time, look for someone that you're pretty sure recites Quran more regularly than you, or recites his Salatul Layl more regularly than you, or is better than you, whatever aspect it is. Look at the person. If you look at this person and say, you know what, every time I've sat with this person, he's never done a ghibah, or he's never lied. He's always been respectful of other people. And I look at myself and I think, you know what, I love ripping into my friends. It's not a great habit, but it's a bad habit that I've had from years of growing up here. Now I know I need to remove it. So what am I going to do? First step is find someone who is better than me and attach myself to them, keep myself in their company so it rubs off on me. So, when I'm trying to get out of that negative mindset, trying to look for someone who's positive as well. And that positivity also breeds that thankfulness that then breeds more positivity that gets one out of that thing. Also get out of the house every now and then. If I'm in that dark place, we have a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, look, if anyone is depressed, take them to an area of greenery and let their eyes look over this area of natural beauty, because it will ease their sadness, their depression within them. So there's all these different things that a person can do. And it does become difficult. When you're in that situation, everything, you get tunnel vision. And one of the things we learn about in martial arts is, you when you're learning, you learn to get hit and hit and hit, so that you don't get that tunnel vision in a situation where you're faced in a combat situation, because you're aware of, because you've been beat down so much spiritually and mentally and things like that. When we come out of these experiences, we're always somewhat better because we've lived through that. And when we're in that, it's very difficult. We get tunnel vision. So there's a multitude of different things that a person can do. Go out, get out the house, force people to come round. Having guests around your house. We've become so isolated, especially with lockdown. But even before lockdown, hosting people in our homes, it's just not something we do anymore. Our parents used to do it, but we're like, I'm gonna have to clean up afterwards. I don't think about the barakah that this person's bringing and all the bala they're taking out of my house. So these little things that we've got to start doing, again, reviving these various sunnah of the Holy Prophet, of bringing guests in, is great. I kept a beard, that's the sunnah, but I'm not going to let anyone else into my home, because I don't want, I don't want their nazar or their, their evil eye on my possession. But they're not even your possessions. They're given to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put your trust in Allah. So there's all of these things. Sometimes we just create a situation for ourselves. And so practical ways of getting out of it: surround yourself with people that you'd like to be like. Ideally, you'd like to be more godly and inclined towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surround yourself with those sort of people. And there are fun, godly people out there as well, believe it or not. They're not all boring. There's a lot of fun brothers out there and sisters that that will help understand the religion and are fun to hang out with. Get out of the house, look around, read about the world, look at different cultures, look at different things. It just broadens your mind and helps you break out of the shell that you've constructed for yourself.
Asantum, there were a lot of really beautiful, very practical points there. Alhamdulillah. And it's useful because I'm the same. Like with my friends, like we rib each other and we cut each other down a little bit. Now I can say that if anyone's listening from my voice, I'd like to apologize to you for all of those jokes. I didn't want you to get tunnel vision. You see what Sheikh said? I was trying not to encourage this in you. And also, if it's true that you only have friends with those who you want to be like, guys, I want to be just like you. So please don't keep it to heart, inshallah. And it also makes me think of doing dua for your friends and doing dua for your people around you and people, because although sometimes you can't meet in person, one of the messages of Shahr Ramadan is to remember one another in dua, especially on Laylatul Qadr and these things. And the idea of collective worship, those are practical ways of spending time with one another. But even in my private time with Allah, I'm supposed to mention my friends, whether it's in Salatul Layl when I'm mentioning their names to be forgiven, or if it's in my personal dua, or just for their afiyah, which we're told is one of the greatest du'as you can do for someone. It's mentioning other people. Sheikh Zoheir, the month of Ramadan gives us many blessings, but it does definitely give this idea of collectivism, that we are all together, and that my spirituality is not complete without yours, and my progress is not going to be complete without your progress. Is this one of the lessons we can take going forward from the month of Ramadan, that I need you and you need me for this faith? And how can we use this to stay out of this isolationist view of, but Anna, yeah, my approach is most important, you don't matter? Like, how do we counter that approach?
Yeah, these are beautiful ideas as well. Since we're on a podcast, I'll just mention that I covered the idea of brotherhood in 5 podcasts on my own podcast, the Scale of Wisdom podcast. And basically, once you find somebody who is a brother in Islam, you have to realize that this is a very uh, valuable thing. And because it is so valuable, it has certain rights between you. One of the rights, like you say, is that you pray for each other, but many other rights as well. And the thing is that when you have these valuable people around you, and you are helping each other go along the spiritual journey, um, then of course it is a lot easier. But as for communal dua, um, communal dua is a beautiful thing, but I think when it comes to many of the du'as are not necessarily supposed to be done in a communal setting as well. So it's a balance here between necessarily ritualizing your time together and doing the things that you're supposed to do. So, for example, praying together is a beautiful way to have a together time. Studying together is a beautiful way to have a together time. Yes, maybe some du'as as well together is another beautiful way of having time together. So I don't know if this is answered the question or if I just went off on a digression completely.
The context which I didn't add was because I was
Yeah.
thinking recently of many of the tragedies we've had in this month of people around the world in suffering, especially in
Mm.
Gaza, in Palestine, in Yemen, in Pakistan, in Kashmir, and
In
this feeling
Kabul.
of like
Yeah.
I can't do anything for them, but at the very like, maybe I can, but at the very least I can remember them in my dua, and for some reason
Mm.
that does help soothe the heart when you remember these people in your dua because it adds a kind of connection to them or spiritual empathy or just recognition of their suffering before God, which seems to be more important
Mm.
than before in front of other people that I mentioned to God my complaint that I see the suffering of those around me. So I'll recast the question to you in the okay, now this is me coming in. My question. Why does it help to remember the oppressed in dua? Why does it have that calmness in one's heart?
Mm. Well, as you know, there are some hadith that talk about the Muslim community and how the Muslim community is like one body. So that if one part of the body hurts, the other part of the body feels that hurt. To view ourselves as just single entities, if you like, just little cells that are all separate from each other, is not an Islamic way of looking at the Muslim community. The Muslim community is supposed to care about each other. The Muslim community is supposed to pray for each other. And also, another way of looking at this as well is to also see the Imam of our time as the father of this community. Now, the father of any amount of children will always care for each and every one of those children. So, in the sense, if you also take this back to just as an example, as a family example, when you have one child that doesn't care about the other children, that's not the same as one child who cares about the well-being of the whole family. So this is the importance. The importance is that the rest of the Muslim community is like one body. That's why it gives you soothing and calmness to try and do something for them, to at least recognize their pain, or even if they're not oppressed, to just pray for the well-being of everybody, to pray for the success of everybody. These are all very important things, and of course, the uh, the Imam of our time is the father of all of them. And so if you like, you can almost connect through everybody through connecting through the Imam of our time, who is the father of the community.
Alhamdulillah. If there are people who have set one of the goals of this month to build a relationship with their Imam, as some people may have, or one of my targets is to be closer to him or to gain a familiarity with him or to speak more to him, these kind of things. Maybe they've spent the month of Ramadan doing, you know, dua, nutbah, dua ahad, ziyarat aminullah, like Ali Yasin, these kind of ziyarat. Sheikh Nabil, how does one build a long-lasting relationship to the Imam, which is not restricted to months of religious significance, maybe Muharram, Shahr Ramadan, but it is a evolving dialogous relationship with the Imam? maybe someone wanted this from Shahr Ramadan and they want to keep this up, what do we say to them?
Yeah, outside of those du'as, du'a iftitah that we've been reciting every single day, uh, you know, right at the end of it, the whole, this whole du'a, I'm there. Allahumma adhinta li fi du'aik. Allah, you've given me the ability to, do du'a. So now listen to what I have to say. And then all of a sudden, I don't ask. I'm like, oh, how many sorrows have you dispelled? How many things? Then alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And you see constantly through this dua, like I'm setting up to ask for something, but then I remember something else and I'm like, no, I can't ask. And then eventually when I go to ask, it's all about the Imam of the time. That it's all about, okay, if you're going to bring me together with people, Allahumma al bihi sha'fana. If you're going to bring us together, if you're going to stitch together our disunited flock, if you're going to, make us united, then make sure it's through him. Yeah. And all of the troubles, everything I'm seeing in the world, I'm saying, look, Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin kareem. I'm asking for that government to be established. Why? Because it's a government of justice. It's a government of fairness and peace, of equality, where people are treated with human decency. That's what I'm asking for. This whole, right at the end, that's what I'm going there. And I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, through the Imam, unite us. Hasten his reappearance so we can live under that righteous government, so that we can, be together to actually help one another. And again, that dua is me doing it on my own, but I'm praying for the collective. Sometimes, like Sheikh had said, we've flipped it over. Like if I don't have a crowd of at least 5 or 10, I'm not doing dua. Not enough people to do dua kumail today, so we won't do it. We've turned the whole affair into a collective affair. And that's part of the sort of the tick box exercise we've made the whole religion. Laylatul Qadr comes, I look at the sheet that the masjid is handed out. Oh, right, okay. Tick, 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 tick. I've got them all done. I feel as holy as anything. And now, that's it. That's great. I didn't concentrate a single bit in what I'd asked for or what the purpose of those surahs were or what I was just saying, Allahumma la'an qatalata al-mu'mineen or astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Oh my God, how long is this going to take? But when worship is alone and I'm focused and I realize, wait, hold on, I don't have to do everything. Let me just do the things that I can actually concentrate on. That gets me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, much more than me flicking pages forward to see how much more of this dua do I have to go through. So yeah, getting closer to the Imam alayhi salam. 30 days have been working towards it. Laylatul Qadr is about the Imam. He is the Sahib-e-Am. He is the one that's receiving the Imam. So everything is going around the Imam. I need to understand. It goes back to what Sheikh has been saying over and over. Education, understanding of what is the role of a hujjah. Like this maqam of wilaya. What is this maqam that separates us from Tawheed? This hujjah of Allah, why is it that he's so integral that Allah says if it's not for this hujjah, the heaven and earth would cease to exist? He's like a cog in all of existence. Whichever Imam comes into that position, he is the essential cog that keeps all of existence running. The moment you remove a hujjah, everything collapses in on itself, because that's the system that God has established for me. And we have so many ahadith. You look at Ziyarah Jami'a Kabira, and you look at the maqam of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that is spoken about in there. You're talking about خير, in ذكر الخير كنتم أوله وأصله. You're saying, oh, Ahlul Bayt, when we're talking about khair, anytime I see anything good in this world, I know that you're the origins of it, you're the roots of it, you are the branches of it, you are the start of it, you're the end of it. Yet that is the position of the Imam. So now, when I want to maintain a relationship with the Imam, I need to understand the beloved. I need to understand him. And that's when I go to Dua Nudba, whether it's Sahih or not, or whether it has a sanad or not, or whether we're being too Imam centric or not. The fact of the matter is that this is the one that God, the system that God has put in place. He's saying, look, this is to me through them. You come, they are what I have placed there. So now when I understand this Imam and I understand his position, then when I'm reading that dua, and Azizun alayya an ara al-khalqa wa la tura, my beloved, I see all of existence around me. And I know it's because of you, but where are you? That's when my tears fall from my eyes. Oh, Allahumma inna nashku ilayk faqda nabiyyina. At the end of dua, at the time when we're complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, complaints only come from the heart of the lover, the one that's in love, the one that really, really ardently desired to see his prophet. He really wanted to see the wali of the time. But this ghaibah has separated. And he knows it's because our numbers are too few. All we need is 313, but those 313 that I should be working towards are not even there yet for him to come. And our enemies are increasing and the times are turning against us and we still can't see the wali. When I realize what the Imam means to my very existence, then all of a sudden I will automatically create that relationship with him. Then I've got to force myself to then dedicate an hour, call it the Imam hour in my day. Every hour should be for him, but the way our minds work, just dedicate an hour. Find 1 hour in the day. I'll say, look, 4 o'clock is my Imam hour. Forget everything else. I'm going to sit 15 minutes. I'm going to sit. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to do a few du'as for him. I'm going to give some sadaqah. I'm going to recite 2 rakat salah for his sake. That's my Imam hour. No one disturbed me during that time. I just need to talk to him. And when we realize that he's in talking range, there's a ghaibah is not something that means he's hidden. No, he's there. We just can't see him. We just can't recognize him. So when I can sit and I can just talk to him, he will reply. Whether I understand it's him that's replying or not, that's a different matter. But he will come and help me and help sort my problems, and at the very least pray for the barakah in my life that Allah will then bestow on me through it.
Alhamdulillah, we do pray that everyone taste a morsel of the pleasure which you are describing. And I think if anyone is listening thinking that there is something missing or something lacking or something that doesn't add up, please look to your Imam to be the thing that puts it all together. Like you mentioned, the cog in the machine that we don't always recognize the importance of, but when we see it, then we see the entire machine, we see the entire system when we see the Imam. So that was a beautiful remarks. I was gonna ask both of you for closing remarks, but I think I'm gonna be like, that was rather beautiful. What I will ask this to both of you to close the episode, which is, what would be your advice? Just advice to the one who is maybe counting down the hours before Eid or is come to the end of the month. With like this example now is a very practical thing they can take with them. But if you were to give general advice to somebody about what they should be thinking, what they should be prioritizing, and what mindset they should be at the cusp of the new year, the new spiritual new year, I will ask both of you, what should they be thinking? So Sheikh Zoheir, perhaps over to you. What advice do you have for the listener at this junction in their life?
Okay, thank you very much for this whole jalasa. I've enjoyed it very much. I think there'd be a couple of advices that I would just put there, especially if somebody's feeling tired. The feeling of tiredness means you need to relax a bit. So if a person can not put too much pressure on themselves so that they don't feel that tiredness as the month leaves, rather that tiredness turns into a love for this month, because sometimes when we're tired, we just want things to end. And that attitude in itself is something that we want to avoid at the end of the month of Ramadan. We do want to seal, they always say it's important how you end. So you want to seal the end of the month with that love for the month. And that just means if you're tired, you need to rest a bit. Obviously, not resting in terms of stopping fasting or anything like that, but resting in terms of not putting pressure on yourself for it to be a certain way. And in terms of taking, there's one advice I think that is one of the most important advices for any time that you go through where there has been some kind of development, and that is that a person should take out a few moments and write down in point form what they are taking out of the month. What are the meaningful changes that they are taking out of the month? So whether that be a realization, whether that be a practical thing that they want to try and develop, whether that be a commitment to gaining more knowledge, whether that be learning more about spiritual health, whatever those things are that the person feels like they've gained from the month, they should try and grasp that gain and hold it. Sometimes when we gain and we don't grasp it and we don't keep it, we lose it. Whereas if we take that moment just to put it down in a couple of points, and basically get a hold of it, then we can hold on to it after we've regained our kind of energy, and move ahead with it. So those would be the kind of closing advices I would give there.
Alhamdulillah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Agha, for those advices, pieces of advice. Sheikh Nabil, same question to you. In addition to that, and I guess to close us off, what advice do you have for the listener?
There's not much I can add to what the Sheikh has said. I mean, the perfect pieces of advice. But we rarely write things down anymore, you know, and quantify. I mean, we quantify our physical growth, but we never quantify our spiritual growth in the sense of what is it that I achieved, what is it that I want to hold on to, and what is it that I want to do. Um, Finding a mentor and things like that, are later on they will come and people will start to require that. But at the very least, I can try and say to myself, look, I'm going to try and recite more Quran, or, I'm going to just set myself simple goals going out, and know that this religion didn't come as a burden. It's just my mindset. The Holy Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we didn't send this religion as a burden. Everything that happens in your life, everything that you've gone through spiritually, mentally, physically, Allah never does wrong by his servant. Never does wrong. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot pre-Shahr Ramadan for the last 4 or 5 months, over this idea of that Allah never does wrong by his servants. And sometimes it's difficult to understand the issues that we're going through in our lives. It's difficult to understand the problems, but no, there's always the light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're connected to the Lord of the worlds, when you're connected to a power that is beyond any power this world possesses, then you instantaneously know that, wait, hold on, he's got my back. There's nothing that's going to put me down. There's nothing that's going to knock me back, because I'm connected to him. And anything that's coming my way is because he wants it to come my way, and it's for my betterment. And when I can look at things like that and try and flip, situations around in my life. I remember going to prison in California. Not I was going to prison, but I was visiting prisoners in California. And I said to them, many of them weren't even Shias, and I said to them, look, there's 2 things that you can do. Either you can sit in here and hate the world that put you in this place, and hate the lifestyle and whatever ended up, or the system that falsely imprisoned you if you're here under false pretenses. You can turn around and hate that. Or you can turn around and do what Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam did. When he got put in prison, the first thing he did, he said, my Lord, I asked you for solitude and you gave me prison. I thank you for that. The situation is flipped on its head. So anytime I find myself in that dark place, try and flip that situation and say, look, God is not going to do bad by me. I wonder what he wants to give me out of this. And if I can do that, so many issues in my life will be resolved.
some wise words to close this episode and indeed the month of Ramadan. So if you now find yourself at the end of the month and thinking about goals and plans, I hope you found this discussion useful, especially in the practical tips and tricks that were mentioned for sustaining one's spirituality. And bearing in mind that it's not just spirituality, the month of Ramadan affects our physicality, our emotional states, and our relationship to God in a spiritual way. So we hope that we have taken from this month motivation and guidance and some practices like being around people, like education, like nature, like remembering others in your dua. And all of these, like writing down, for example, all of these are advice for us to allow from this month of Ramadan until the next month of Ramadan to be a different time, a time with even one or two practices which have made us more enlightened or more peaceful. Because, like we mentioned, that is the purpose of the holistic deen of Islam. It is to give the person peace in their heart and in their mind, in their body and their soul. So we pray that for you. And thank you for tuning into this episode, for the previous ones for the month of Ramadan, and in general to subscribing to the Monthly Reflections podcast. Inshallah, we will see you for the next month's episode.